Not me, man. I'm like, let's get it going.
Mm.
I'm
Bum,
ready.
bum, bum. Something about Monday on a Tuesday. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this fireside chat with your host, Abby,
Hello.
and me, Hank. And as I alluded to earlier in sprints, if you happen to join us for sprints today, Abby and I are going to talk about tropes today, but not just tropes, because people tend to look at tropes as a four-letter word. Um,
I love four-letter words, though, by the way.
I mean, let's be honest.
Just
But tropes get a bad rap, because people assume when you're talking about tropes, and if you are using tropes in your writing, and let's be honest, everyone uses tropes in your writing, even if you're trying to avoid them, you're actually creating a trope out of avoiding tropes. Um,
think
but
on that for a second.
yeah, right. Yeah. Let that, it's like an Escher painting. Um, going down the staircase that never goes down.
It's like Harry Potter.
Yeah, like Harry Potter. Uh, which just makes me immediately think of all of the references to MC Escher in pop culture that are hidden, which is kind of a trope of its own. Golly,
Do you
man.
know what's crazy?
Tell me.
One of my favorite concerts that I have ever been to.
Mm-hmm.
God, I'm really like, you guys are gonna think I'm crazy once the words come out of my mouth. Weird Al Yankovic puts on an amazing freaking concert.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
But in between every song, he had this giant screen behind the concert setup, I guess, that just played on loop all these pop culture references to Weird Al, and it was never ending like that Escher staircase. I didn't even realize how much he had permeated pop culture until I saw his concert, and I was like, man, he is a phenomenal entertainer. Let me just say that. So,
Well, and goes back to the 80s. I remember like Weird Al in the 80s. And yeah, he has periods where he's more popular and he kind of waxes and wanes in pop culture, but he's kind of been a mainstay. I remember my kids like freaking out when he did what was it, Amish Paradise? Like
oh
the
yeah,
Gangster Paradise,
yeah.
it's so funny. Anyway, today, welcome to the Weird Al um, Appreciation Club. So, so anyway, but I think before we can talk about subverting tropes, Abby, do you think about tropes because you write
Mhm.
a very specific genre, subgenre, uh, audience type? Or do you come into the story creation process thinking about tropes, um, or um, like how do you think about the building blocks, the tools that you pull out of your writer toolkit?
So for me, I think more about genre expectations. So I
Hmm.
don't know, are we kind of splitting hairs there?
Yeah, I think that's kind of
Because
yeah,
it's like, for MG, there are certain things that you kind of want to do to satisfy that audience.
right,
And it doesn't necessarily and it goes across all genre levels for the age range. Like all MG kind of tries to follow a similar set of rules, and like, don't give the adults agency in the story.
right,
You want the kids to have agency. Like, you don't want to have the adults passing down the lessons. You want the kids learning the lessons on their own, things like that. But then you layer in the tropes for the different genres on top of that.
right.
I mean, MG people think about other things too, like word choice for your reading level. So there's
Mm,
some things in there that, like, if you decide to play with it, you have to play with it for a reason. And I think that's the thing that adult writers can learn from middle grade. So, like, take for instance Lemony Snicket. Now,
Okay.
it was delightful. I interviewed him once. Actually, I didn't interview him. He came and did a question and answer session for us. And
Wow.
oh my God, he tells the funniest stories.
Oh, I bet.
Totally inappropriate for an MG writer, which, by the way, tracks. Because
Yeah.
if you ever spent a hot minute with me alone off of on air, you will know I am also wildly inappropriate most of the time. And so I feel like that's kind of an MG writer thing. We have to be warped and twisted in our own way to be able to do what we do. But one of the things that I love that he did was a couple things, actually. He told me when he was writing Series of Unfortunate Events, he wanted to subvert genres, right? So he was doing something that not a lot of people were doing at the time. He was kind of wanting to play with the gothic kind of genre, right? He wanted to write characters that he never physically described because he wanted children to be able to imagine that they themselves were the characters. So anytime he described them, it was in more of an interior way than an exterior way because he wanted kids to be able to see themselves physically depicted on the page. So, I mean, how many people don't describe what their main character looks like? Not many, but he didn't. Now, he had a cover, so we're going to throw that out there. But he had a very specific reason for not doing the thing that he did. And I think that's key.
Speaking of the cover defining your character, even if that was not what Lemony Snicket meant to do, or even set out to actually not define. Jim Butcher in the Dresden Files. Every Dresden Files cover, Harry Dresden is wearing a hat. Nowhere in the books does Harry ever wear a hat. But that first cover artist decided that Harry had a hat. And on the covers, Harry has had a hat every time. And it's kind of an inside joke at this point. It's so, yeah, the cover artist, can kind of spoil the fun a little bit. But when it's done so much that it kind of becomes, a wink and nod with the audience, it
becomes fun. Yeah, it's fun.
It's kind of fun. It's if you know, kind of thing. But
another thing that Daniel Handler did that is not as widespread. So when I write, I'm always very conscious of the vocabulary words that I use. And if I use something that's like a $10 word, I have to scaffold it, right? So you kind of have this. Daniel Handler uses like a bazillion $10 words.
Right.
He worked it into the character, and he made sure that you could tell from the context in which he was writing, so he scaffolded it, what all those words meant. And it was kind of like the narrator giving you a little
right.
And I loved that. And his narrator is his pen name, right? Which I think is freaking awesome.
Yeah.
But he owned every one of those things that he was doing differently. He did it for a very specific reason, and he made it work. I think he's a flipping genius, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, and the whole narrator as pen name is a fun. He almost like broke the fourth wall.
Yeah.
By inviting you in, like very purposeful in his like the readers in on the joke.
So hard to write too, though, by the way, because Jeff and I really tried it. We wanted our narrator to actually also be our pen name. Carl Carlton was the name of our narrator. And
does he have a signature dance?
He does not have a signature dance, though. Wouldn't that be amazing? He has two heads. One is Carl and one is Carlton, because there's two of us. And so we we made our voice, though, the Carl Carlton voice really come out in the footnotes. So we use footnotes in our story, which is something that very few people do in MG. Like Terry Pratchett did it, and I think he did an amazing job of it as well. So but we tried real hard, and we ended up sort of dialing it back. What we wanted to do, we decided not to use the pen name because we want to be able to drive to our own written works separately as well. And we realized by not being really forthright about who we were, it was going to be harder to connect it back to our written stories. And so we worked in Carl Carlton as like a character itself. But we did give it a sporting try, and it was super fun. But
I love that. Speaking of tropes, our romance writer friends and romance readers, if there is a genre that wears their tropes on their sleeve, it's the romance community. They demand to know what the tropes are you're using, and they're like, they don't want you messing with their tropes.
Fake dating. I freaking love a good fake dating book.
Right.
I will pick up any fake dating book and be like, I'm in. Let's see how you fake date it.
Well, speaking of that, some of the popular romance tropes are enemies to lovers. I think we can all figure it. Fake dating or fake relationship, friends to lovers, forced proximity, which is interesting. Grumpy sunshine.
Grumpy sunshine's a good one.
It is a good one. That defines me and my wife's relationship.
And you can work grumpy sunshine into any of them.
Right.
You can have like a grumpy sunshine fake dating.
Right. Forced proximity. That's the perfect place for a grumpy sunshine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't they call that one bed or something?
I think that's like a subgenre of
forced proximity. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you got second chance romance. Former lovers reconnect, often overcoming past unresolved issues to try again. Opposites attract. That's kind of a given, I think. Forbidden love / secret romance. Romeo and Juliet. Hello. Marriage of convenience / arranged marriage. Love triangle. Protagonist is caught between two potential love interests.
Ooh.
So, and the romance readers come to the bookshelf, and they want to know what trope you're using, because that defines kind of what the setup to the story is going to be. What are the building blocks of the story? And so romance writers, pull these things out of their toolkit, and you chimed in with a couple of examples of but where this goes beyond formulaic is, yes, we understand what the setup to the story is going to be, and we can almost decide what the outcome of the story is going to be. Well,
happily ever after. If you're writing romance, you better happily ever after it.
Happily ever after, or happily for now.
That's right.
If it's going to be a series, it could be happily, but we must stick the landing on a happy note. So, we kind of know what the outcome is going to be, but the trick for the writer is to take the reader on a journey through those tropes, and deliver something exciting, meaningful, satisfying, while the reader understands what you're doing, which, romance writers, I think get a bad rap sometimes because of these things. But the ability to take those things that the reader already assumes when they come in and still deliver a satisfying experience, I think is genius.
Creativity flourishes within boundaries.
Yes.
People don't always understand that. Fine artists get it, right? Yeah. Because if you give a painter a blank canvas, and you say, go for it, most of the time they're going to stand there with their paintbrush in their hand like, what am I going to do? But if you
Yeah.
say, paint a tree, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly it's like, okay, I can paint a tree. Now let me get really creative with this tree. It's got to be a tree. We have to be recognizable as a tree. Is it going to be a tree that's a different color? Is it going to be a, and then your brain starts to work like, how am I going
Hmm.
to make this tree different from every other tree on every other
Right.
canvas that's ever been painted? But you got to have that beginning constraint so that
Yeah.
you can then be able to think creatively within that constraint. And I think people hear tropes and they just think like, well, I'm not gonna write a trope. I'm gonna do this thing that no one has ever done, and then you get a little like snotty with it. But the tropes are your friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
An-
you can be insanely creative within a fake dating sort of
right.
parameter, right?
Yeah.
So,
Another way to look at it, and we're talking about, the human condition here. If you were to take a group of kids and put them in the middle of an open field, just expanse as far as you can see, that group of kids is going to typically stay in a cluster there in the middle where they're
mhm.
safe. But you build a fence, around a portion of that, and those kids are going to go all the way to the edge of the fence because they're safe within that boundary, and they're going to explore and they're going to push open. Whereas if you give them infinite possibility, they're just going to stay clustered up there. So there's something about, we as humans want to be safe within boundaries, and we want but then we start to, kind of press the edges there, which is weird, but that's the way we are, and so we should think about that when we go into writing. So if we kind of understand what our genre expectations, what our tropes are, how do we think about turning those on their head? Like you mentioned, um, in middle grade especially, that you don't want the adults to kind of impart wisdom to the kids. Generally, you want them to figure things out for them. You want them to have agency. Can you think of an example where that doesn't happen, where the adults are kind of a primary factor in the story?
I mean, I really can't, not
Right.
without having to go to the internet and deep dive that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
What
mean,
Yeah, are there tropes in middle grade that you can think of that get subverted? Um, but
okay, so it's going to be more along the lines of things like because I was trying to think about this earlier. I was like, okay, so say you decide you're going to write a book about unicorns, right? But you want
yeah,
your unicorn to have two horns. Now, let's just for a moment put aside the fact that uni means one. Okay, so all right, so you're going to have a two-horned unicorn, and you're going to do it just because you can, right?
right,
That might not make a real great story, writing about a two-horned unicorn just because you can, right?
right,
But let's say you're writing about a two-horned unicorn, and the idea is you want to write about a character that is struggling with fitting in because they are different. Suddenly, your two-horned unicorn makes a little more sense.
right.
So I think that a duocorn, Rob said. So your duocorn, right, becomes there's a reason for it. And I mean, that comes back to just about the answer to every question that I think people have about writing is like, how is it going to serve your story? Just writing a two-horned unicorn for the sake of writing a two-horned unicorn to subvert a trope and do something different is kind of a weak reason to do it. It needs to serve the story that you're trying to tell.
Yeah,
And if it doesn't, then what's the point? Why are you doing it? You need to keep asking yourself that. Why? Why am I doing this? And ask yourself that till you get a darn good answer and then run with it.
yeah. Um, I'm thinking of some examples. Leanne Moriarty's book, Big Little Lies, which
Mhm.
was turned into a great miniseries that maybe it was on HBO Max. Don't quote me on that. But a massive cast of all kind of names, and there are definite sort of archetype characters, archetypical, probably, uh,
Archetypical? Yeah, I think
yeah,
so.
yeah, characters in that, and one of those in the miniseries is played by Laura Dern, and she plays this mean rich lady, and you she's kind of always set up to be the antagonist, the baddie, and she goes through a great emotional arc of uh, becoming an ally to the group of moms who need help, and she has so it's a great character arc for her, but it also kind of subverts that trope of the mean rich lady,
Mm.
and is very satisfying on a number of levels, and um, is a great example if you're looking for a trope kind of turned on its head. Um,
I'm looking at NJ said, Here Lies King Arthur, which is actually a young adult novel.
yeah,
Um, so it's not middle grade. It plays by different rules. And she says it goes more towards the adults' stories. Uh, Here Lies King Arthur is a book from the perspective of a kid, but deals with more of the adults' stories and how she reacts to it, like an observer perspective. But it's a middle, but it's not a middle grade book. That's a young adult book, and young adult really plays by very different rules from MG. So, um,
yeah. Um, and then you've got things like Star Wars, which is basically the hero's journey, but it gets tropes subverted all the time through there. You've got the dad who's actually the evil overlord, and you've got the wise old mentor who gets killed in the first act, and all which he the wise old mentor keeps coming back through the force, and
of
stuff.
course,
So yeah, but that all of those. So yeah, so think of tropes as the building block for your story of the things that allow entry for certain readers to your story, but then find ways to make it fresh by turning those things on their head, or if tropes welcome people in, subverting those tropes make them mouth wide open, kind of thing. So when you're writing, do you think of ways to subvert those tropes? Do you like does that ever come into your mind, or do you ever look back and go, "Oh wow, I really turned that on its head"?
I don't. I don't really think that's the kind of writer that I am, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. So no, like I hate to say no. I
Yeah.
feel like I want to say yes, just so I can be in the cool kids club that subverts tropes, but no. I mean, and as a matter of fact, one of my very favorite thing is talking animals, which
Yeah.
I know agents are like, please no more talking animals in my inbox, but I'm like, forget you. I'm all right talking animals all day long. So I'm
Right.
a little more of that type of person where it's like, oh, you don't like talking animals? I'm gonna make you like talking animals. I'm gonna right.
Well, that's a great idea that because a lot of times we'll say like vampires, for instance. Several years ago, everybody was like, no more vampires. Like we've had too many sparkly vampires. Like they ruined it for everybody. But if you could do vampires, but think of something new and fresh to do with, I mean, and let's be honest, Twilight kind of did that, because you've got and they allude to how did they allude to it? The vampires that don't drink human blood, they were like vegetarians. I think they something like that because they would like go hunting deer and drink the deer blood instead of humans.
I didn't. I'm gonna tell you the truth. I never read Twilight, and I never saw the movies.
I I didn't read it, but I did see the movies because I had teenage daughters at the time, and
Robert Patterson or whatever his name is in it.
Gosh, there's so much wrong with that series of movies. So much wrong. But yeah, so so that trope was kind of subverted. The murderous vampire. They're actually kind of good guys. That went around protecting people and that sort of thing. And they had to drink blood, but there was never human blood. They would find ways to get blood, but it wasn't as great as human blood. So like those were subverted tropes. That was a way to take that vampire meme and turned it inside out. Like,
I did once write a zombie who ate grains, not brains. So
I
maybe I
just
did
got a
do
sip of my
it
drink when you said that.
once. Sorry.
I was going
You
to snort out my microphone.
brains.
Grains.
Eat bread.
It's so funny. The only zombies that had a well balanced breakfast, right? So funny. That's so funny. I heard Brandon Sanderson talk about his series Mistborn, which I just heard, I think last week, that Apple TV is making a Mistborn movie. But he said that the original idea that he was thinking about was the idea of kind of the big bad guy that always gets defeated at the end of a story. But his idea was, what if the bad guy won and then has been in control for a long time, and now you've got a ragtag kind of heist cast of characters that try to win back. So immediately you've got, well, if the good guys always win, what happens if you're in a story where the good guys lost? And then what kind of dynamic does that set up in the world? And
are they taking over? They're trying to take the world back from.
yes.
So in the end, are the good guys going to win because
Well,
it's looping?
well, it started like it was going to be a 9. Well, it started as a standalone story that then turned into a trilogy, that then turned into a trilogy of trilogies, except for the middle series is now 4 books instead of 3, and so that kind of threw a kink in it. But anyway, yeah, Mega. I'm trying to.
Megamind is not the same as.
I'm trying to remember.
Guy.
I remember the characters. I just don't remember the story.
It's so Megamind is the bad guy at the beginning, but he's not really a bad guy. So the good guy gives up and decides to fake his own death. So Brad Pitt's character, who's like the Superman,
Yeah.
at the beginning fakes his own death, lets Megamind win. So Megamind takes over the city, but he gets real bored with being a villain real fast. And so he creates a new superhero for him to fight. But this new superhero becomes the actual bad guy, and Megamind has to step up and become the good guy to defeat the bad guy. And that's how it all like wraps up. I freaking love Megamind, by the way.
Yeah.
One of the best lines ever, because David Cross plays like the evil henchman, which is like the brain that's he's like in a little floating thing.
Yeah.
And he gets mad at Megamind at one point and he says, well, I'm going to pack my thing and go. And so we say that all the time, like singular. I'm going to pack my thing and go. We say it all the time when somebody gets mad at my
funny. That's so funny. I don't I don't usually think of the tropes and then subverting them in the writing, but a lot of times, and I've been thinking about this last couple of days, a lot of times my initial story idea is like a trope and then a subversion of that trope. A lot of times, for instance, the last book I wrote, Crossroad Blues, is a subverted trope. It's the guy that makes a deal with the devil at the crossroads, but then wants his soul back. So, boom, that's a trope that that almost everyone's familiar with, in some way or another, at least the kind of the make a deal with the devil at the crossroads. Everybody knows what that means when you say that. But then what happens when you want it back? So, okay, well then that opens all kind of possibilities. Well, who is this guy? Why did he make a deal with the devil? And then what would
How
you have to do to undo all that? What
Mhm.
what would you have to bargain back with to win it back? What would be more advantageous to the devil
Then
than
your soul.
than your soul? So then that starts the what if process. Oh, well, if that's true, then this has to be true, and then for this to be true, this has to happen, and then all of a sudden, from that initial question, I know where I'm starting and I know where I'm ending, or
Mhm.
at least where I hope to end. He makes a deal with the devil, but then he wants to undo the deal. That's my beginning and my end. Now, how do I get from there? That's where all these questions start setting up the what if and the cause and effect chain that go from the beginning to the end. And that's yeah, that's how it works for me. And and I'm thinking back on a lot of uh, story ideas. Like my novel Writer's Block was, what if you had a typewriter that anything you typed would come true? Well, then I start thinking, well, what if the circumstances that this guy finds himself in, what if the typewriter that could make anything happen, what if that's not where the power is to change his life? He thinks that's going to be it, but what if it's something else? If you had a typewriter that anything you typed would come true? What could be more powerful than that for a writer? And then from that started this whole what if question.
I
So
mean, a trope is a really great place to start if you
yeah,
don't have any idea where to start, too.
yes,
You know? Like you think you're one of those people that like, I don't know, I've only got one book in me and I don't know what I'm going to do next, which we've talked about that too, right?
yep,
Like people who think, "Oh, I've only got this one book. I'll never write another one. I don't have any ideas." Yeah, you do. Guarantee you've got more ideas.
oh yeah,
Starting with the trope is a great place. It's a great jumping off point, you
yeah,
know?
and
And you can lean into it too.
oh yeah,
You don't have to subvert it. Lean into it.
right. And subvert it is maybe a bad word for some people because we think that there's like a lot of um monkeying with the trope that has to be done there. And really what you're doing is think of it in terms of, instead of subverting, find a way to take that trope that you're thinking of and have it make a left turn where readers are not expecting. Um, that's technically subverting it, but that's maybe an easier way to think of it. Have your characters do something within those boundaries that the reader doesn't expect. That's what we're talking about.
Mhm.
And maybe the bad guy becomes a good guy, and in the maybe the bad guy finds redemption. That's the ultimate subversion of the trope, because we expect our good guys to be good guys, our bad guys to be bad guys. It's very popular now for our good guys to be kind of morally gray, and they dip in and out of, they ultimately do good, but along the path they're broken and
I
they
love
make.
a good Dukes of Hazard where the bad guys are actually the good guys and the good guys are actually the bad guys.
You talk about the two modern day Robin Hoods.
Two modern day ones. That's one of my favorite songs too. All time
Yeah.
favorite songs. This is the theme song to Dukes of Hazzard. I love me some Waylon Jennings.
Did you ever read his autobiography?
No, do I need to?
He talks about that song and how it came about and how he became the narrator of the show and kind of some inside baseball. It's
Do you know that my inner narrator, like the voice that talks to me in my head when I have conversations in my head and things, is Waylon Jennings?
I'm not even mad. Not even mad.
Waylon Jennings lives in my head 24/7.
Oh, so fun. So
All
fun.
the things you guys learn about us when you
Yeah.
do it.
Right, right. Yeah.
Who's
Well,
your narrator, Hank? Is it
Willie
you?
Nelson.
Is it Willie?
Willie's like my spirit animal.
Oh God. You know who my spirit animal is? Phil Dunphy from Modern Day Modern Family. I think he's the closest, like, fictional thing to
Yeah.
me that I could think of is Phil Dunphy.
So funny. It's so funny. Oh man. So what are some things to avoid when subverting tropes? Because we're talking about this in a fun, mostly positive way, but what could be some potential potholes
I'll
in
tell you what,
subverting tropes?
stuff that just doesn't make sense. I
Yeah.
mean, and sometimes doing something just to do it, you can make it make sense and get away with it, but sometimes it
Yeah.
just doesn't make sense and you confuse your reader.
Right.
So if you
Right.
go off on some weird, I'm going to subvert a trope and I'm going to write sparkly vampires that sunbathe on the beach in Florida. And then people are like, wait, what? Why? How? And you don't have any answers. You've just
Right.
lost your reader. So
Yeah.
what was the point of that? So I would say, hands down, stuff that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So whatever your trope subversion is going to be, it needs to operate within the laws of your universe that you have set up already. And some of those laws of the universe are inherited, like you said, with vampires.
Yeah.
For hundreds of years, we have known that vampires avoid the sun. So Stephanie Myers, was that the lady that wrote this?
Yeah, yeah.
She developed this kind of tack on legend where the vampires could be out in the sun, but their skin would sparkle, and it was kind of a dead giveaway. So they avoided the sun for that reason, not the, I'm melting, kind of reason,
And yeah,
which opened up possibilities for her that these, vampires could go to school.
I was about to say, suddenly they could go to school. So there was a reason why she did it.
Right.
She made it make sense.
Yes.
Even if you don't like it, like even if you're like, that's the stupidest thing ever, sparkly vampires, she made it make sense and did it for a reason.
Yes.
So success.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was a success because she probably made 100 bazillion.
Oh, it was a wild success.
Yeah.
A wild success. And the reason that we can sit and make fun of it is because she's sitting at home counting her money.
Heck yeah, she is.
And not worried but what we haters are saying, Vampire haters.
I only didn't watch it though. I mean, granted, I was a little bit older than I think the targeted audience was for it, but I loved Charlene Harris's, and I had just played all that out, and I was kind of over it. I think because Charlene Harris came before Twilight, right?
I think so.
True Blood ones.
Yeah, she definitely started before then. Yeah. I interviewed her a few years ago, and she's from Mississippi.
I think she would be delightful.
Oh, she was a hoot. And if you watch was it HBO or Showtime
True
or
Blood,
whatever,
baby.
True Blood, if you watch that, you would think you get an opinion of who you think Charlene Harris is. Then you meet her in person, and you're like,
no, I think delightful. And I've read a bunch of her other stuff.
Yeah.
I just loved it.
Yeah.
I just think she's got to be a kooky old lady. And
she is a hoot. A hoot. But yeah, that was and a lot of I'm just thinking of different series now. You think of a Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin. So
another one I haven't seen, by the way. So we're gonna.
I read
Twilight, like I know.
I read the first 4 books like way before the TV series, and I never watched the TV series, but there's so much trope subversion in that series. One, there is no main character. There's 40,000 main characters, and there's eventually a thread that kind of narrows. I think um, folks will have to correct me if they've watched the TV series because I never went. I realized pretty quickly that the series was never going to be finished, so I just kind of abandoned it and went on. But um, there's there's a lot of trope subversion in there, and ironically, one of his main influences for that series was the Wars of the Roses, the historical
Mhm.
um, European,
England.
yeah, thing. So a lot of that was based in reality, and it completely subverted what we expect from these types of stories, which was really interesting because it that tells us um, that one, we want our stories to take us from real life and take us somewhere else where
Mhm.
things make sense. And I think George Martin kind of proved that real life doesn't always make sense and things happen and people do horrible, horrible things. And it's just the way it is. And, credits. It's like people are terrible.
Do you
Credits.
think he's really just playing a joke on us?
Probably.
Like, do you think he's just sitting back laughing? He's like, I've made enough money. I've written enough books.
Oh, he's
I'm
another
good.
one that's just sitting home counting his money, and not worried what us haters
What are we
say.
going to do when that's us, Hank?
Oh, I'm gonna have billboards that just have me counting my money, to the haters.
I came up with my next stew book yesterday, driving
Really.
home from school drop off. Stew the duck and the meanie weenie. Because, everything has like a food component for
Of
stew.
course.
He's always on the lookout for some food thing, but then there's a complication. And I was like thinking about Stu on the playground and somebody being mean to him, and he'd be like, "Don't be a meanie weenie." And then I was like, oh, "But a weenie is also a food." I was like, oh, "That's it." Hot dog vendor, and there's always ducks hanging around like a park with a hot dog vendor, right? So I'm like, somebody's gonna be a meanie weenie to Stu. I don't
Mm,
think Stu is
not
gonna be what makes me $100 million, but you never know. Maybe he
you
is.
never know. You never know. Did anybody think sparkly vampires were gonna make $100 million? Which just tells you write what you want to write because you don't know. You don't know. Stephanie Myers, I don't know. I've never met her, but I can only assume that when she started, um, she didn't expect that book probably to just utterly change her life, but it did.
Or maybe she did and we don't know because
Or
it's
maybe
so
she did.
funny because I do not feel like writers are like a pendulum and either and like within the same breath will be like, I am the biggest genius to have ever been born. And
Right.
then the pendulum swings. It's like, oh my God, I suck. No one's ever going to read any of my stuff.
Yeah.
There's no middle ground with us either. It's like we are one or the other and simultaneously both.
Yeah. I was about to say, and so often we are both. I am the greatest genius and the worst writer ever in the same breath. A lot of times, just
Always.
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 And especially in an art form where you can spend the better part of a year,
Mhm.
making this thing. And I have two kids that are visual artists, and I'll see them create something in an afternoon, and it's just brilliant. And I'm just thinking to myself, one, I don't have that kind of talent, but two, I can imagine like having an idea, creating the thing in the span of time before you can get discouraged about it. Because
None None of my stuff was ever instant gratification like that in fine arts. So it's not all like that. Do
yeah,
you
and I realize that's not all like that, but I'm just saying from an outside observer,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
way I see it.
Well, I even as an inside observer wished I was one of those people because I got my degree in weaving, y'all. I made cloth one thread at a time. If there was never a direct correlation to book writing, I mean, I'm like, why do I always pick the most tedious things to decide to obsess about?
But you got that great shirt that you're wearing that you wove from the.
Actually, I screen printed this shirt.
Did you?
It says "Make mugs, not war." I made it for my friend Mark, who is a potter, and I was gonna make him a shirt that said "Mugs, not drugs," but then I realized he really likes drugs, and so I made him one that said "Make mugs, not war." And then everybody, all my potter friends wanted one, so I made like a bazillion of them. Now that's pretty
That's
basic
so
gratification,
funny.
but anyway, that's the story behind my shirt.
That's so funny. Um, Beth says Sherry Tepper and the Family Tree, one of my favorite books. I love one section. I wish I could read it with fresh eyes. The surprise was great. Yes,
Pulled her up.
yes. That there's so many stories that I wish I could experience for the first time again. Because once you've experienced that kind of shock and the delight that comes from someone telling you a story that you think you understand what's going to happen, and you're totally there for that, and then they pull the rug out from under you or twist it around or whatever metaphor you want to use, and you're like, oh, and it just burns in your psyche, and you hold on to that as like a core memory, and that's the whole reason why we do that, because we want to make readers have that kind of experience.
I've got that book pulled up, and they also talked about cinema therapy, the YouTube channel. I think Beth brought that up, and the thing too. And I was like, oh my God, my film school child is going to go crazy over that. So I pulled that up for us to deep dive a little later.
Beth said, but Sanderson pulled off the whole planet on a turtle thing, which is totally. Did he? I know Terry Pratchett did that
Turtles
in
All the Way
Discworld.
Down was John Green too, I think, right?
Yes, Turtles All the Way Down, which is
Which is not actually about turtles, right?
no. It's about the obsession
Yeah.
of going down, and then the ultimate, and which is one of my favorite Sturgill Simpson songs, Turtles All the Way Down. Look it up. That's all I'm going to say about that. Yeah. Yeah. So for me, a lot of times, and I didn't really realize this until I started when last week, whenever we said, oh, we should do a show about this. I started thinking about in my story process, a lot of times I start with that. Like, I've got this idea. This is something that we're all familiar with, but what if we do this with it? And I think of that in the same way that you think about comps.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I was
Dukes of
just thinking
Hazzard meets this, which is kind of taking the Dukes of Hazzard and subverting it in
Mhm.
this way. So kind of, I mean, that's what anytime you're doing a genre mashup or comp mashup or whatever you call that, that's kind of using that same thought process, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it really is.
Yeah. So yeah, so this is not it's not rocket science when we talk about this. If tropes are the thing that draw people to our books, that people that it's the calling card that tells them this is something they're going to like, then when we subvert those tropes, we're giving them a way to take those things that they like and have a satisfying experience, a new experience with it. Which is what we're trying to do every time we sit down to write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at us solving all the writerly problems in this
Solving
world.
all the writerly problems. Yeah. Yeah. But kind of going back to the way we got on the Twilight tangent was things to avoid when you're subverting tropes. The number one rule, make sure that that what you're doing is consistent with the world that you have built. The trope of vampires is going to come with its own baggage or rules that people expect until you tell them that it's different in your story, that it's different in your world. Sparkly vampires was a great example of that. They can go out in the daylight, but they're going to get caught because people are going to see them sparkle. So what does your character have to do to avoid those sticky situations? Well, then that brings up all kind of plot possibilities. So you've got a character that always wears his Letterman jacket all year long. And
Is
you
that why
know,
Robert Patterson wore so much makeup in that movie?
well, yes, that becomes a thing. That you've got to hide the thing, and then you've got, well, why does this 10th grade guy wear makeup all the time? That's kind of weird. And so
Just a
you
theater kid.
So then he's a theater kid. You've got characters that make assumptions about characters, and then you get to prove why their assumptions are wrong,
Mhm.
and which opens up all kind of plot possibilities and character growth possibilities. And so thinking of this subtle subversion of a trope, and then thinking of the reasons why that subversion makes sense in your world can open up because if your characters in your story are assuming that the tropes are valid in the same way that your readers will, then you get the opportunity to explain why this is happening and why it makes sense in your world. And then that usually opens up conflict between your characters, whom you are subverting the trope, and the other characters, the supporting characters, who are also assuming these trope things are real. And then there's a conflict there. There's tension, and then conflict means plot.
Everything blossoms from there.
Everything blossoms from there. Yeah. So, some advice. Advice is the wrong word. Some things to think about. Think about the tropes that you want to explore, things that you enjoy, things that are the building blocks of a fun story, and then think of a reason why one of those things that should be true about your story, if it's going to fit in this genre, why it is not true, and then give a good reasoning for that, and then look at the ways that this is going to set up tension between characters. It's going to create holes that your characters have to then navigate, and watch how your story blossoms in potential.
Voila.
Voila.
There's your magic formula, man.
There's your
That's the
magic
recipe.
formula. Yeah. Um, so yeah, that's uh genre and tropes and how to think differently about them. Um, Thanks for joining us, everybody. Abby, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think we've done a nice job. Look at
Yeah,
us. Like I said.
absolutely. Um, let's see. Beth says,
Oh, I
would
was
it
about
be hard to twist a trope you like? What about twisting a trope you don't like?
Mm.
Um, I don't know. I don't really. I always twist a trope that I do like. Um, I don't know.
I think if I had to twist one I didn't like, there's a trope that's not my favorite. I know if NJ is still here, she will laugh at me. I don't like dragons.
Yeah.
So, like, how could I twist dragons so that I did like them? I'm gonna have to think on that one.
Yeah. That's a good one. You've got like How to Train Your Dragon.
Okay, which I do, by the way, like, and wanted to go watch the
Yeah.
live action piece of
Mhm.
that, which I noticed just came out.
Yep, it's on Netflix.
But
Just came out the other day.
you know what? Okay, so I'm actually not a fan of epic fantasy. I don't like it when I can't pronounce anyone's names. They get very confused in my head. Everything's like an epic quest to save the world and this like
Right.
giant fantasy, whatever. But you know what I do love? A good cozy fantasy. That would make me like dragons, I think. I like how the whole cozy thing has subverted entire genres, by the
Yep.
way,
Yep.
by making it cozy. I'm like, ooh, I could maybe get into a cozy dragon story. So I'll throw
Well,
that.
like I've alluded to, and I can't remember the guy's name for the life of me. I'm gonna have to look it up. But this guy, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. Talked about that he always wanted to write a western, but he he was afraid that he wasn't familiar enough with the genre to be a believable Western writer. So he just introduced a unicorn to it. And so you've got this cowboy who rides a unicorn, and once you drop a unicorn in, all
All
bets are
bets
off.
are
All
off.
bets are off. So he subverted the trope of the cowboy by dropping in a unicorn, and then all kind of magic and silliness, and you can even be serious about it. It's just
Do you see this?
the Dragon Rescue Farm. You know, I
I
do
have to
remember
go
that
look that
now.
one up. I cannot believe I have not thought, how did Terry Pratchett do it? Because I love Terry Pratchett.
I know, and he wrote like 40,000 Discworld books, you know, and there's so many. If if there's a topic and you're like, I wonder how someone could do this, check out Terry Pratchett. He's probably addressed it at some point in some farcical, fanciful way. And yeah, look up the Discworld novels. You won't be
Dragon
disappointed.
Rescue Farm. The whole rest of my day is now like diverted. Why did you guys have to bring that up? Because
Yeah,
now I'm going to be like, whoa, that they just hooked me. That's
yeah.
how you hook me.
Do you remember the old Disney movie Pete's Dragon with
Yes, I
the
love
animated dragon?
Dragon though.
Passamaquoddy.
And
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I also have a special place in my heart for Aragon, but we've already discussed that, and I hope you told Christopher Paolini that he literally saved my sanity one semester while I was teaching
Yeah, I did tell him that story.
the
Yeah.
world's
Yeah.
biggest misfits.
Love it. Love it. All right, folks. Figure out so everybody. Okay. Let's put
And then
let
put it in the community. Figure
yeah.
out, what trope do you dislike that you could subvert? Is that where you were
Yeah.
going with this, Hank?
Yeah, I was going to say figure out a trope that you like and then figure out how to do something new and unique, which is subverting tropes a lot of times. And then let's write a short story about it. We're always promoting people writing short stories. This is explore that trope and that trope subversion in a couple of thousand words and write a short story about it. I
Write it
think
in the
you'll find it.
Dabbleverse if you want.
What's that?
Write it in the Dabbleverse.
Write it in the Dabbleverse. We've got to talk about that more at another time, but we're out of time this time, folks.
Bye.
Writing.